The verse about orphans and saying the distinction between the ages.
Yeah.
And so I've gone to Surah Al-Nisa where it talks about orphans, and it says they ask you for a ruling about women. Say Allah gives you a ruling about them, and so does what is read to you in the scripture about orphan women, to whom you do not bring what is prescribed for them, yet you wish to marry them, and about those deemed weak and oppressed from among children, and that you should treat orphans justly. Whatever you do, indeed Allah has always been all-knowing. So I've gone to Corpus Quran, and now it says concerning orphans of girls, Nisa. So here, even using the Corpus Quran, and that's what my point was. Nisa can be used for girls and women.
Yeah, so it refers to those women that are from an orphan origin.
Yeah, but here it's saying
grew up to be women.
But it's saying specifically, and what is recited to you in the book concerning orphans of girls.
Nisa means women.
Nisa is not
It doesn't mean girls.
Brother, the translation.
Yeah,
let me tell you. Let me explain to you.
Because even in your translation,
yeah,
it says
let me
women.
explain to him one thing.
Yeah, but
Arabic,
but that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Female is almost a synonym of
Yeah, for
Nisa
girls or women.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's why I then referenced the story of Moses, where it clearly, when we look at the Bible, all the women were saved. That includes the young girls, because it was only the young boys that were slaughtered. So essentially, what I'm trying to say is that when we even look at the breakdown, because this is like, it's only translated by scholars.
So it's referring to those women that are from an orphan background.
Yeah, of girls.
But the point is that it's not, it doesn't say an age.
Women.
That's what I said.
Of girls.
So where do they get girls from, Nisa? Because Nisa never means girls.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying.
Because you can look in any independent Arabic dictionary, and they always give the meaning as being women. It's never girls.
No, because that's why.
But
But that's why the contention would be whether you can marry prepubescent girls or have sex with
because
them.
if you look at that chapter in chapter 65 verse 1, it says, it speaks about divorce when you intend to divorce your women, and it's within that context it speaks about those women who are past the age of menopause, or those women who haven't menstruated, or those who are pregnant.
I would object to, yes, those who have not yet.
It doesn't say yet, it just says haven't menstruated.
So that would include young girls. You couldn't just say, well, it only applies
This
to...
is how some of the commentators or the Mufassirun understood this, because they were not aware of this physical illness which is today known as primary amenorrhea, which is a medical term that's used for females.
But that would have to be but that's the thing, I think that's something Muslims appeal to, but you would have to demonstrate that that was a very common thing, so that's why it was prescribed, because I would object and say that is something that we cannot find examples within Islamic literature of one woman who was within that sort of
suffer from amenorrhea.
Yeah.
So you have, for example, the Dasr Abu Hayyan.
Okay.
So he makes reference to that. This refers to a physical illness that exists.
But does he give
females?
Yeah, but that's an opinion. But I'm saying there is no example from the Islamic literature of a story or relating to that revelation. So he's given it. I'm saying what is his?
As far as you know, but there may be. But the Quran is also intended to be a universal revelation until the Day of Judgment. This is a medical term that's today coined to refer to this kind of condition, which obviously did exist thousands of years ago.
And you read Arabic?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll show you the Arabic. So Ibn Hajar, and you can check the Arabic to see if it's correct or not. So there's a hadith where Ali was blamed for having intercourse with a slave girl without observing istabra. He says, now the first allegation is defensible, as she was a virgin and not pubescent, and thus she did not need any istabra, in accordance with the practice of many Sahaba before him. She might have been on a period after becoming his and then become purified one day after.
So in chapter 24, verse number 158, it speaks of those before they have reached puberty, within a different context about seeking permission before you enter or on someone. So it uses that phrase before they've reached puberty.
Yeah.
But interesting enough, that phrase doesn't appear in Surah 65 verse 4.
Well, I mean, but that's what I'm saying. I guess my
Because
contention.
if it was referring to prepubescent girls, then you would expect it to explicitly have mentioned that.
Well, I think that's based on a presupposition. So again, because even when you were speaking with Bloodfire about the story of Gabriel, and you kind of sided with the interpretation that it was Gabriel because it's lifted from the Bible. So I've appealed to the verse of Pharaoh that it essentially.
And I don't deny that it probably is alluding to that story.
Yeah.
But it's given a summary of that story rather than because it's already familiar with the audience.
So, and I've given 2 verses, so that one and the other verse, where we can go into that concerning the
well, that just refers to adult women from an orphan background. That's how I see it.
Well, I would
first value. And also, if you look at the legal schools as well,
Yeah.
all of them say there's an age of marriage or an age of consent.
Yeah.
So, like for example, the opinion of Abu Hanifa, which is the oldest surviving legal school, and it's the one that is mostly followed in the majority of the Sunni world. So his view was that the age of marriage was from the age of 18 and onwards.
Right.
So there wouldn't have been this type of legal discussion among scholars if you could just simply marry anyone at any age.
But the thing is, there is enough evidence within Islamic literature to suggest that people actually did agree with marrying.
No,
even in Hadith,
that
for
was
example.
just because even like you quoted Hajar Asqalani.
Yeah.
So he's from the Shafi school.
Right.
So within the Shafi school, you even have like a legal age of marriage, whereas if you could just simply marry anyone, then there wouldn't have been that debate or discussion in the first place. But doesn't the Bible like speak of like age of marriage, or it just simply says you can marry anyone at any age?
Well, the Bible doesn't give an explicit age. When we look at within Judaism, even then, the age of marriage was around 14. So even within that context, like.
People did get married young in ancient times.
Yeah, but the thing is, like within Jewish law or within Jewish custom at the time, that's what I'm saying. Even like, for example, Muhammad married Aisha at the age of 6. That is half the age.
It's reported that, but like I said, like Abu Hanifa, he's from like the 2nd generation or 3rd generation of Muslims, and he didn't believe in that particular age, because if he did, then he wouldn't have said that you cannot get married until you reach the age of 18, because he was from the same city in which that particular narration was narrated, from the Kufa, because no one outside of Kufa reports that particular narration. It's only narrated in Iraq, but it seems that Abu Hanifa seems to have rejected that narration since he would have been aware of it, but he says the minimal age of marriage is 18.
Well,
and you know Tabari as well. Tabari lists Aisha as being one of the early or first converts to Islam. So she converted to Islam before Hazrat Umar. And the minimal age for someone's shahada or testimony to be valid is about 6 years old. So she couldn't have been 6 at the time of her marriage in Medina, which would have been about 13 years after.
Yeah, but if you're saying the age of being able to do a shahada is 6.
Yeah, that's the minimal age for the testimony to be valid. Yeah.
So why would that differ between her getting married at the age of 6?
Because it would mean that she was much more older than 6 at the time of her nikah, because the nikah is supposed to have taken place after the death of the Prophet's first wife, Khadija, and she died before the migration, I believe in the 10th year of the Prophet's mission. And the Prophet migrated to Medina and married Aisha within roughly 2 to 3 years. So she couldn't have been 6 at the time of the marriage.
That's obviously we're going against. There's conflicting stories with different timelines and whatnot.
Yes, so this isn't a salvific issue.
No, that's not.
Because even when it comes to the marriage of the other wives of the Prophet, there's difference of opinion as well as to the age as well.
I'm not making a claim.
So it's not surprising.
Yeah, I'm not making a claim it's a salvific issue.
Yeah.
My point is just whether it was allowed, because as well.
It's just an academic point.
Well, for example, when you look
academically, many scholars would disagree
Well, when you look in Reliance of the Traveller, which is from the School of Fiqh of Shafi,
Yeah, that's right.
It talks about having sex with prepubescent children.
Yeah.
So therefore,
What does it actually say?
okay, so and I have the Arabic as well. So it says, a person is not considered to have the capacity to remain chaste if he or she had only had intercourse in a marriage that is invalid or is prepubescent at the time of marital intercourse.
Okay, so where does it say that you can marry prepubescent?
No, I'm saying in terms of having sex with a prepubescent child.
That is invalid or is at the time of marital intercourse?
Because your claim was, for example, marriage was at a certain age, but I'm saying actually even in Reliance of the Traveller, they're mentioning having sex with prepubescent children, but it's not something that is invalid. So I'll read it again. A person is not considered to have the capacity to remain chaste if he or she has only had intercourse in a marriage that is invalid or is prepubescent at the time of marital intercourse. So this
isn't this about like punishing those that have had?
Right, but this is
sex with the
acknowledging.
prepubescent?
Yeah, but this is acknowledging you're not liable for punishment if your child is prepubescent.
Where does it say that?
Because a person is not considered to have the capacity to remain chaste.
Yeah, so where does it say they're not punished? Because the chapter is about
penalty
for fornication or sodomy.
Right. So a person is not considered to have the capacity to remain chaste. So it's negating whether you should be punished, because remaining chaste is what stops you from being.
The person doesn't have the ability to remain a virgin, or
So if she only has intercourse in a marriage that is invalid, so therefore it's saying you don't receive a punishment if the person was in an invalid marriage, or if they at the time of intercourse in a marriage they were prepubescent.
They don't receive punishment.
So what is this? If the offender is someone with the capacity to remain chaste,
because on the top it says the legal penalty.
Right. So here
obligatory imposed upon
So
anyone who's fornicated or committed sodomy. So someone who's reached puberty, someone who's sane.
Yeah, so it starts off by saying if the offender is someone with the capacity to remain chaste, then he or she is stoned to death. Mm-hmm. Now here's the mitigation. So the person who doesn't have the capacity to remain chaste...
So where's the mitigation, does it say? Because if the offender is someone with the capacity to remain chaste, then he or she
is stoned to death.
Someone with the capacity to remain chaste means someone who has had sexual intercourse with a spouse
in a valid marriage and is free.
Yeah, so this is referring to someone who's committed like this sin.
Yeah.
But it doesn't say that it's valid that you can marry a prepubescent person. It's just someone who's committed this sin.
Right.
Is liable for this punishment.
Right. So therefore, okay, I'll build on that. But at first it's saying it's not, according to the Shafi school, every people have different interpretations, but it's saying marriage where the intercourse. So here there's no prescribed punishment.
Yeah, but the prescribed punishment on the one who's committed this sin. But the person who was like raped, they're not punished for that crime because they're innocent.
Right.
But it's not saying that it's valid to marry a prepubescent.
Right. So if
you can show me from the lines of the Traveller,
but this is the thing.
This is the age of marriage starts from like
this is a school of fiqh for Muslims to follow. So the primary
one of the schools of fiqh.
So the primary audience of the reader is a Muslim. Mm-hmm. So therefore, if someone is married, it's talking to a Muslim.
Okay.
So therefore,
there's a Muslim who's either like committed adultery and they're physically mature as well as mentally sane, then these are the people that are liable for this punishment. But it's not saying to marry prepubescent girls, because if you can show me like even from the Shafi manual that the age of marriage is like from 1 year old, then I would say you have a point. But I don't think you can do that.
Well, I would say from I mean, people have, again, that's what I was saying, like when you look at some of the hadith, they more talk about having sex. There's hadiths where like Ali had sex with a prepubescent slave girl, and there was discussions. Yeah, I have it with me. That's what I was. Do not these like her have sexual intercourse? He said there is nothing wrong with performing the sexual act upon her without observing Islam. But I'll try and find something with Arabic, so because I think it would make it more authentic.
Okay.
So again, this was from
Do you
Ibn.
want to summarize? Because I wanted to speak to someone before he leaves.
Yeah.
You know those people that are here for abortion?
Okay.
That is speaking against abortion. I wanted to kind of join them.
Okay. So essentially, and I just quickly go into my other point. So my first point was essentially like.
Shall I leave you to it?
Yeah.
Or do you need me to
Yeah,
stay?
you can give a wrap up of what your views are.
No, it's okay. I
Yeah.
think just let people make up their own mind.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And also
It's like-
maybe if we can have a conversation about Jibril.
Yeah,
as well.
I would
just
like
wanted
that.
to.
If you're still here, I'll come back.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, when I've finished.
Yeah. Okay. We'll have a conversation about Jibril afterwards.
thank you.
Okay. Yeah. So essentially, that conversation was about sex with prepubescent children. And clearly within Islamic literature, there's many examples of hadiths where it shows even the companions having sex with prepubescent children. And I'll read one from, so this is from Musannaf ibn Abi Shayba, and it says, Waki narrated to us from Ibn al-Mubarak, from Yahya bin Abi Kathir, from Ikrimah, regarding the man who buys a prepubescent slave girl, even one younger than that. He said there is nothing wrong with touching her before observing istabra. And the second one says, regarding a man who bought a prepubescent slave girl, do not these like her have sexual intercourse? He said there is nothing wrong with performing the sexual act upon her without observing istabra. So clearly within Islamic literature we see many instances of having sex with prepubescent children being permissible because there is no istabra. Another point is I went into the Quran 4127 where it talks about orphans and it uses the word nisa to refer to girls. And we also see the story of Moses where in the Quran where Pharaoh says, where it says that boys were killed and the women were saved. But we know from the biblical story that the females that were saved included children. So therefore, the argument that it only applies to saving the women of age doesn't make sense. What relevance is the women of age? Because it was about killing the young boys. So therefore, are they arguing that the young girls were killed because of Moses? But he says, well, it doesn't really mention it, but it just left it out. But it doesn't follow when you read the text. So clearly, if we look into the text, the discussions within Islamic literature, there was a validation of having sex with prepubescent children and also the ability to marry prepubescent children. And on that note, peace out.